So we did say that we were going to have to talk more about Quinn Hughes and the Minnesota Wild. Whether or not he was going to stick around, whether or not he was going to get traded. After reports came out from Michael Russo on The Athletic that the Minnesota Wild tried to acquire Luke Hughes in a trade with the Devils, only for New Jersey to deny it immediately, it really paints a picture as to how much the Wild want to get older brother Quinn signed to a long-term deal. Now, let's dive into the latest on the Quinn Hughes situation. Obviously, contract-wise, everything stays the same. Contract expires at the end of 26-27, $7.85 million a year. Quite reasonably one of the best contracts in the NHL when you're looking at it from just a value to dollar amount perspective. But here's the video that was making rounds earlier yesterday. Quinn Hughes and his end-of-season post-elimination press conference. He said, "I really like it here. I think that I would definitely be open to re-signing." Now, it's a 1-minute long clip, and Quinn has his arms crossed and he answers the question as eloquently as Quinn Hughes normally does. But then the follow-up question is asked afterwards, and it's really interesting. Here's a reply from Anne. She goes out there and says, "Why is nobody talking about the part where the reporter asks him what factors matter to him for the extension decision?" And he ums and uhs, and then lists one factor, which is talking to my parents and brothers. And yeah, that's actually accurate as to what's talked about here. The question is, hey, what factors matter to him when it comes to making that decision to extend? And Quinn starts it out by saying, "Oh, that's a very good question." And then he just kind of waits around, like talking to my brothers and talking to my parents. And that's a really interesting part about it as well. One of the biggest elements that will contribute to whether or not he decides to extend in Minnesota will be the conversations he has with his brothers in particular. Anne goes out there and says, "This, to me, very clearly he'd obviously be open to re-signing, given the Wild are contenders, but that part of the quote makes it clear he's not going to stop trying to snoop a way out to play with his brothers, which is by far more interesting." Now, for what it's worth, this Twitter user seems to be a Canadiens fan, so it doesn't seem like they have any skin in the game when it comes to talking about the Minnesota Wild. But I do question whether or not this element of Quinn Hughes planning his inevitable departure or planning to go to New Jersey is something that we can think about more. We have made some videos already over the past few weeks talking about some of these elements here. We had folks talking about Quinn Hughes' plan, whether or not that's actually something that you can put stock into. We had spoken out about Quinn Hughes and potentially going over to New Jersey once more. It's been an entire thing, and at this point, until the guy ends up re-signing, we are not going to put these conversations to rest. Now, as it pertains to what people think is going to happen, this is what Elliot Friedman said on the D. Mace, Vingen, and Donich pod. He says, "I think the number one thing is, can they get Quinn Hughes extended? Until I'm proven wrong, I say he extends for 3 years." Now, Elliot is just going out there and guessing at this point, but 3 years for Quinn Hughes, that would make him on the books from 27-28 to 28-29 to 29-30. That's right in line, essentially, with when Jack Hughes' contract expires at the end of this New Jersey Devils term deal. I mean, 2030, it's right there. Seems like Quinn and Jack would be interested in setting themselves up to have extreme leverage by the time the 2030s begin. As we had mentioned in the previous video, Luke Hughes, his contract goes on till 2032, which gives New Jersey a slight edge, I would say, in terms of all the long-term projections, because they already have 2 of them. They just need to get 1. It's why Bill Guerin was so interested in getting Luke onto Minnesota, especially when you consider the fact that he hasn't had a great year, and his contract goes on the longest. So if you're interested in getting all of them together for the long haul, you got to start with Luke. That's it, I guess, plain and simple. The other two, they are better players, but they do have a little bit more salary cap and contract flexibility. At least with Luke, it's like, you're locked in for an extra 2 years after 2030. So Quinn Hughes, if he ends up re-signing after talking to his brothers, maybe that length is 3 years only. Maybe that's all it takes to get this guy to stick around, and maybe he only sticks in Minnesota for that long because he wants to have that opportunity to play with his brothers. Maybe that feeds into why he was so desperate to win so quickly, right? It's like, well, Quinn Hughes, he's on a ticking time bomb here. He only wants to play with his brothers in the second half of his career. He wants to win that cup in the first half. And then after he does that, then it's okay. You can play with your brothers, do whatever. And that's why we had discussed the Quinn Hughes departure plan. Either he ends up playing in Minnesota and he gets eliminated quickly, which would lead to him wanting to leave quickly because, the team is not good enough and we can't win, or the Wild go somewhat far into the playoffs and then he decides, what the heck, I can stick around here because we've got unfinished business. Either that, or if they actually end up winning the entire thing, maybe Quinn Hughes leaves at that point because it's like, we already accomplished the task that we set out to do. We won. Which, in that case, if Minnesota ended up winning the cup this year, I don't think anybody would have really cared if Quinn Hughes decided to leave right away, or if he got traded shortly after to New Jersey. He would have already won that darn cup, right? You have Tony, the St. Louis Blues guy who watched hockey for the first time a decade ago, saying, Quinn Hughes, he gone. He planned that answer. The simple fact that he brought up the exact amount of hours since the season ended, rehearsed. Yeah, no, that's exactly what he says. He's like, it's been 36 hours removed from us losing, so there's still a lot to think about. If they ask me anything about re-signing, I'll just say the season ended and I need to talk it over with my family. It's only been a couple of days. Wait, no, 36 hours. And then you've got Canucks fans like, don't believe his lies. Yeah, this is memento over here, buddy. This is memento. So with all that said, the Quinn Hughes conversation is looking pretty interesting. Another reply says he can't say otherwise or else it would look bad. I think he'll go to New Jersey. Canucks insider fan goes out there and says this is the same thing Quinn Hughes said to our Canucks organization, that he liked it here and he wouldn't mind re-signing, that he liked all the restaurants, and then he dipped. Makes me think he'll do the same thing on Minnesota. Don't be surprised if he does. Bad news for Jersey, he's going to scoop them away from that tire fire. This guy couldn't even be bothered to say something remotely close to this in Vancouver. Instead, he said, I couldn't even sign if I wanted to. What an absolute loser. Worst captain in franchise history. I won't necessarily disagree with that. I was actually about to disagree with this comment over here because honestly, I don't remember Quinn Hughes saying anything along the lines of he'd be open to re-signing in Vancouver when he was in Vancouver. It was clear he wanted to go. And maybe Canucks fans, we should have come to terms with that a long time ago. The guy was traded back in December. So, it's a new era, isn't it? With that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Quinn Hughes situation and whether or not there is some duplicity in the way he answered these questions as to whether or not he'll stick around? Do you think he ultimately stays in Minnesota? Does he sign for 3 years? 7 years, or does he just get traded to New Jersey? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.